Good evening. You're watching The Big Story with Haryanto Jaman. I'm Olivia Kwe. Subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode.
We begin with the latest figures in Singapore. The Health Ministry confirmed 247 new COVID-19 cases today. 5 of them are community cases, 2 Singaporeans or permanent residents, and 3 work pass holders.
Migrant workers living in dormitories make up the vast majority of the remaining cases, and Singapore's total cases now stands at 41,216.
5 antibodies that could neutralize the virus that caused COVID-19 have been discovered by scientists at Singapore's Defence R&D Lab. These antibodies prevent the virus from infecting a patient's cells by binding with the part of the virus that is needed to enter the cells. The discovery came after researchers screened hundreds of thousands of antibodies taken from blood samples of recovered COVID-19 patients. When administered, the antibody taken from a recovered patient transfers the person's protection to the recipient, enabling any patient to better fight the infection and recover faster. Human trials for the most promising antibody of the 5 will likely start in the upcoming months, pending approval from the Health Sciences Authority.
More school activities, including CCAs, will resume as students from all levels return to school daily from June the 29th. The Education Ministry said today that schools will try to restart CCAs that can be conducted through digital means. These include dance, computer, programming, arts, and robotics. Schools can also organize activities requiring physical presence, but only at the class level to minimize intermingling. For PE lessons, group activities and games that involve minimal physical contact are allowed. These include games like badminton, table tennis, volleyball, and sepak takraw. Up to 5 students per group can participate at a time, and safe management measures will be taken.
Domestic workers can once again spend their rest days outside when Singapore enters phase 2 of reopening. The Manpower Ministry said domestic workers can go out, but under strict conditions. These include wearing a mask, not having more than 5 people in a group, not loitering in public places, and avoiding crowded places like City Plaza, Lucky Plaza, and Peninsula Plaza. Those who want to remit money should schedule appointments with their agents or use electronic platforms. The ministry added that domestic workers should seek consent from their employers to go out on a weekday when there are less crowds. MOM offices will carry out inspections and disperse large group and outdoor gatherings. Those who do not cooperate risk being fined and having their work passes revoked.
If you've been out and about in the last 2 months, you would have seen and used these QR codes set up all over Singapore for people to check in and out of places.
From Friday, the SafeEntry system and the TraceTogether app will play an even bigger role as more people leave their homes to go about with their daily activities. When used together, contact tracing will be more efficient and accurate.
In early June, users of the TraceTogether app had to key in their NRIC numbers. While this is a new requirement for the app, IC numbers have been used in the SafeEntry system all along.
For SafeEntry, users scan a QR code and key in their IC and contact numbers to check in and out of a place. This will log the times that they enter and leave a place.
Meanwhile, TraceTogether is an app that estimates the approximate distance between people as well as the duration of their encounters using the signal strengths of their devices. The use of NRIC data in the two systems allows for quicker contact tracing as it's linked to other information such as home address and alternative phone numbers.
We're now joined by tech correspondent Yip Wai Yee, who will tell us more about how the two platforms are used together. Wai Yee, for a start, how different are the two systems and why are both necessary to be used at the same time?
Mhm. So the two are actually very different. Safe entry, as I think a lot of people know who have been going out to supermarkets and malls and all that, it's required for you to check in and check out of a location. So actually what safe entry does is it helps contact tracers to find out where the potential clusters is. And so, sometimes the government will publish information on where some of these public places are that confirmed COVID-19 cases have been to, so that and that data was taken from SafeEntry when they checked in. Meanwhile, TraceTogether, which relies on Bluetooth signals, this one is about proximity data around you. So if I have TraceTogether and you have TraceTogether and we're near each other, our phones or devices will exchange Bluetooth signals, and then that is how the contact tracers will use these Bluetooth signals information to find out if you are considered a close contact of a person. So how close you are to a person, and also how long your duration was with the confirmed case.
Right. Well, Wai Yee, if both TraceTogether and SafeEntry are supposed to work very uh, symbiotically, why does the TraceTogether app need our NRIC data as well? And I guess another question is, how does having this data in the TraceTogether app help in bolstering the contact tracing process?
hmm Yeah, so actually, I think a lot of people have that misconception that maybe the two are just one big system, and they're
Mm-hmm.
actually two entirely different systems. So even though, yes, the government has our information, our NRC information from Safe Entry right now, they don't have it on TraceTogether, because when we had registered on TraceTogether, we had only used our mobile numbers beforehand. So now they're hoping that with NRIC numbers, it's much more of an assurance of who the person is. Because the thing about mobile numbers is, I think people do sometimes change their numbers quite often, or I think there are cases of some families where they even share numbers, like home numbers or mobile numbers. And so with an NRIC number, which is much more unique to each person, it's a much more higher degree of identity assurance. So we know exactly who that person is. And that's very important. If you're going to issue a quarantine order to someone for them to stay at home, you can't be issuing it to the wrong person. And another aspect that's good about having an NRC number is that in case your phones are switched off, or if your phone numbers change, the government can still come and find you and inform you if you have been in close contact, because your NRC number would be linked to, let's say, your home address or maybe alternate emergency contacts. So they need to be able to get in touch with you very quickly so that they can isolate you.
Right, so there are multiple access in terms of contacting the person that you need to contact, yeah? And what about iPhone users? So for like myself, I'm an iPhone user, and I found that the TraceTogether app doesn't quite work very well with my iPhone.
Yeah, that's a problem actually that all Apple users would have faced, because that's something to do with the iOS system. So what happens is when you use an Apple device and you're running an app in the background, it will stop scanning for Bluetooth signals. And that would obviously be problematic, because if I'm outside and I'm using TraceTogether, but I want to use other apps, so I run it in the background and it stops scanning, then it won't know who is near me, or we cannot exchange Bluetooth signals that way. So, but don't worry, Apple users, I think going forward, will be able to probably get a wearable device called a TraceTogether token. So the government is working on rolling them out, the first batch at least by the end of this month. And I'm not really sure, they haven't really announced the details on collection and all that, but that is supposed to be an alternate way to use TraceTogether if your Apple devices don't work.
Well, thank you so much, Wai Yee, for taking time to share a bit more on these two platforms, SafeEntry as well as the TraceTogether app. We were speaking to tech correspondent Yip Wai Yee on how SafeEntry and TraceTogether work together for a more robust contact tracing process. Now, for global headlines, let's go to Dylan Ang.
Thanks, guys. People under 20 are around half as susceptible to the coronavirus as compared to older people. Research published in medical journal Nature Medicine says clinical symptoms of COVID-19 appear in only about a fifth of infections in children and teens. In contrast, symptoms appear in 69% of infections in those 70 or older. The study used data from 32 locations, including China, Italy and Singapore, and went on to suggest that school closures are likely to have a limited impact on the transmission of the disease. The World Health Organization has hailed dexamethasone, a basic steroid, as a life-saving scientific breakthrough to treat severely ill COVID-19 patients. Trial results showed that the steroid, used to fight inflammation caused by other diseases, reduced death rates by around a third among the most critically ill in the hospital. The report has brought skepticism from some American doctors who want to see more data first. As reopening in the US moves forward, new coronavirus infections hit record highs in 6 US states, marking a rising tide of cases for a second consecutive week. Arizona, Florida, Oklahoma, Oregon, Texas and Nevada all reported record increases on Tuesday after recording all-time highs last week. More than 2.1 million people have been infected and 116,000 have died from the coronavirus in the United States, by far the most in the world. And those are the global updates. Back to you guys.
Meanwhile, Beijing is experiencing its worst resurgence of COVID-19 since early February. 31 new cases were reported in the city today.
Yesterday, authorities raised Beijing to a level 2 alert, the second highest level in a 4-tier COVID-19 emergency response level system. Just 10 days ago, Beijing's response level was downgraded from level 2 to 3. Now let's bring in China correspondent Elizabeth Law, who joins us from Beijing. Good to have you back, Liz. Now Liz, you were just on the show yesterday. What has changed in the last 24 hours?
So hi, Jan, hi, Ollie. As you mentioned, basically what has happened now is that the response level has been upgraded. This means that all schools are now shut again. Travel restrictions are in place. And for now, because of the new ruling, any airlines, any flights that are cancelled, customers will get a full refund. And as of today, more than 1,000 flights have already been cancelled, which are all these are domestic flights going come from Beijing going to different parts of China. And of course, in residential estates across the city, they are now put under this system called closed management, where only residents are allowed in. So people like your delivery men, your food delivery guys, your repairmen, and even your domestic helpers are simply just not allowed into the estates anymore. So it's in a way, the city is gone back to being under semi-lockdown mode.
Well, that's a level 2. So is it on the way to escalating to a level 1? And if so, what further restrictions does level 1 entail?
Right. So when it goes into level 1, clearly it's a lot more severe, and we did see the city go into a level 1 response during the height of the coronavirus outbreak just not that long ago, which was during March. Up till March and April, it was still at a level 1. Level 1 simply means that anyone who comes into the city will have to be quarantined. Restaurants will have a cap on the number of people, and even office buildings will have to implement social distancing, where there is a cap on the number of staff that are allowed to work in the office. I would not be able to sit here and talk to you like that now. I would have to wear a mask while sitting in the office. Air conditioning would be turned off. It's all simple things like that. It's quite similar to what already is in place for level 2, but just with additional measures to make it a bit more strict. So yes, to answer your question again, there is a possibility that if cases continue to spike at this rate, we may go into a level 1. But would that again entail a lockdown that is in the style of Wuhan, where no one is allowed in or out, and it's just a very strict management and all businesses are closed? Again, no, that is unlikely to happen, because again, this is the political and commercial heart of the city. For Beijing to go into that sort of lockdown, again, the economic impact is going to be very devastating.
Let's bring it back here in Singapore. Now, as you know, phase 2 in Singapore starts in a couple of days. Are there any lessons we can learn from Beijing's reopening?
Well, as our colleague Chang Ai-lian wrote in the paper today about how we have to be very careful during reopening. Just like Beijing, Beijing is the strictest of all the Chinese cities, and it was really careful in reopening. But I suppose when people are so excited after being pent up inside for so long and not being able to do the things and interact with the people that you're just so used to doing, everyone gets a little bit excited, and you forget the rules that have been such a big part of your life for the last few months. So I think what is very important to remember is that Singaporeans do have to be very careful. I heard that restaurants in Singapore are completely booked out on Friday. Guys, I hope you are practicing safe distancing while being in these restaurants. At the same time, also, I think we have to be prepared that there is a chance that there will be cases that will surface here and there, because this virus is going to be with us for a long time. It was disappointing. It was slightly disheartening to sort of go back to the way we were, but this is probably the new normal that we live in now.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us once more, Liz. And of course, do stay safe in Beijing. We've been speaking to our China correspondent at the Straits Times, Elizabeth Law. Meanwhile, Beijing is experiencing its worst resurgence of COVID-19 since early February. 31 new cases were reported in the city today.
Yesterday, authorities
Football
raised
is on the
Beijing
brink
to a
of
level
a
2
much
alert.
anticipated return in England, but Manchester United forward Marcus Rashford is dominating headlines today for a very good reason. Thanks to his open letter to UK MPs, more than 1 million children in England will be able to claim free school meal vouchers during the summer holidays.
During the coronavirus lockdown, the government is providing vouchers to families whose children qualify for free meals, but it had insisted this wouldn't continue outside of term time. But Rashford's campaign convinced Downing Street to reverse that decision.
But let's go back to the EPL's Project Restart. Following in the footsteps of Germany's Bundesliga and La Liga in Spain, the Premier League returns tonight, which means football fans in our part of the world will be setting their alarm clocks to be up in the wee hours of Thursday morning.
Among them will be Neil Humphreys, a resident sports columnist with the new paper. Neil, it's great to have you with us. Let's start with the positives. How good does it feel to have Premier League football back for clubs, for players, for fans, especially those in Singapore?
Oh, it's been wonderful, guys. Absolutely wonderful. I mean, finally, I have a reason to get up in the morning, to shave my beard. I have a reason for my existence. It's wonderful. And look, you need it, I need it, Singapore needs it. We've had 3 months of COVID-19 situation. Everybody knows that. 3 months since the EPL originally shut down. And now, for the next 6 weeks, we have 92, count them, 92 live games crammed into 6 weeks of pure escapism. And we need it. I was one of those who wrote more than once that we shouldn't null and void this season. Delay it, postpone it, wait whether it's 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, or even 6 months. But we shouldn't postpone. Why? Because we needed a bit of hope. We needed that little smidgen of hope, something to look forward to, and we need a bit of closure. And now we've got it. 6 weeks of pure escapism. Couldn't come back at a better time.
On that note, Neil, what you talked about, escapism, phase 2 in Singapore, of course, starts on Friday, but live music and TV will not be allowed in all F&B outlets, and I suppose that includes live football matches as well. So would that be a huge change in how fans here consume football then?
Yes, but I think we're used to it. Look, if you'd have said to me 3 months ago, I'd be queuing up in a supermarket, wearing a mask, looking like the Winter Soldier, standing a metre behind everybody else, I wouldn't have believed you. But perspectives change, perspectives shift, and we make do. It's the best of the situation. So yes, we'll just retreat back into our homes. We'll watch the majority of the games in the comfort of our own homes, with our families, with our fellow mad Manchester United parents or children or Liverpool fans, whatever the case may be. But here's the thing to think about, right? Here's the thing to think about. You've got 92 live games. being spread out across a very intense 6-week period. So there's going to be games early in the evening, there's going to be games at midnight, there's going to be games at 4 a.m. in the morning. You'd have to live in a pub or a hawker centre if you wanted to watch them all anyway. So the majority of the games will be watched at home, safely, with the families. And I'll tell you something now, you talk about atmosphere, right? The moment Liverpool win that title, you're going to hear a roar in your housing estate, in your HDB flat, in your condo, in your landed property, in your street. You're going to hear that kampong spirit roar like you've never heard across Singapore when Liverpool wins the title. So frankly, it doesn't matter where you watch the game.
Now, Neil, a new normal, that's a phrase frequently bandied right now, and the Premier League is no exception. Socially distanced celebrations, a ban on pre-match handshakes, making do without ball boys, and most obviously playing in an empty stadium. Has the soul been sucked out of the beautiful game, and how much getting used to will this take?
Oh, that's a complicated question. I mean, some people may say the soul was sucked out of the game a long time ago. Look, there's 3 reasons why the EPL is being rushed back. Money, money, and money. Okay, so let's not kid ourselves. There's almost £1 billion at stake here in potential lost TV revenues that EPL clubs would have to return to TV broadcasters if the games did not continue. If it was all about morale and escapism, then the Scottish Premier League would be continuing, the French Premier League, the Dutch football, and even the lower leagues of English football. But they've all been cancelled. The EPL is continuing primarily because of money, because they don't want to pay back the TV revenue. But that said, no, it won't be the same. There'll be no crowd, it'll be quieter, it'll be a more sanitized, clinical version of the game. But it's the best we have at the moment, and we'll just make do. Some football in a different version is better than no football.
Right, well, fingers crossed when the league starts, but there's a very fine line between Project Restart and Project Regret, shall we say. Some players are vocally against restarting the league, but the English FA have responded with mass testing to quell these fears. On the surface, it seems all systems are good to go, but do you foresee any pitfalls in the resumption of the EPL?
That is actually a fantastic question because it has a very complicated, uncomfortable answer. Primarily, we forget sometimes that the English Premier League is set in England. I know it's a global game, but the clue is in the title. It's the English Premier League, a country that still has one of the highest death tolls in the world, among the highest death toll rates in the world, high infection rates still. And we cannot escape the fact that though in Singapore, we're very excited that it's returning, on the day that the EPL returns, the British government announced 233 deaths. That's daily deaths in the UK. So my fear is this, and I've written this before, I knew that the EPL will start, but I'm still, even today, not entirely sure it will finish. Why? Because we're going to face a potentially very difficult moral question at one point or another, which is this. If the games are continuing safely, and they will be safe, but the death toll in the UK, in the country where the league is set, does not decrease rapidly in the next 6 weeks, we're going to have a very difficult question to answer. Are we comfortable watching this game in a country where the death toll is still so high? That's going to be a very complicated question that we may have to answer in the coming weeks. Hopefully not, but we'll see.
Definitely. Now, Neil, on to the champions-elect Liverpool. You're expecting cheers, you mentioned earlier on, in our neighbourhoods when they win the title. Liverpool have waited 30 years and then have been forced to wait a little longer. Surely there's no stopping the Reds, but will this win feel hollow in a sense, given the current circumstances?
No, absolutely not. I think the football that Liverpool played in the start of the season, right up until mid-March when the season was postponed, was just scintillating, beautiful. Jurgen Klopp's gegen-pressing, fast, adventurous, attacking and counter-attacking football. It's been some of the finest, most fastest, most frenetic, blood and guts football we've seen in a long time. No, I don't think this talk about asterisks and it'll taint it in some way. No, they'll win the title fair and square. And we need Liverpool to win the title, particularly in Singapore, because for 30 years we've had to listen to Liverpool fans and the 30-year monkey on the back that they've carried around like Quasimodo for 30 years. So please, Liverpool, please, for Singapore, for Southeast Asia, please, wrap up the title so we don't have to hear any more from Liverpool supporters. But seriously, I want Liverpool to win. They thoroughly deserve it, and I don't think their eventual title will be tarnished in any way. It'll be a magnificent, well-deserved achievement.
Well, it's been a pleasure to speak with you, Neil. Thank you so much for taking time to speak with us. And now it's back to Dylan for what's also in the news.
The Indian Army said on Tuesday that 20 of its soldiers were killed in clashes with Chinese troops at a disputed border site. The clashes are a major escalation in the weeks-long standoff in the Western Himalayas. The statement comes as India and China held military talks to prevent the border row from intensifying and destabilizing bilateral ties after the deaths of an Indian colonel and 2 junior soldiers in the Ladakh region. This is the worst border tension between the two countries in nearly 45 years. North Korea has rejected South Korea's offer to send special envoys to ease escalating bilateral tensions. The North also vowed to redeploy troops to demilitarize border units in the latest step towards nullifying inter-Korean peace accords. The announcements came one day after North Korea blew up a joint liaison office set up in a border town as part of a 2018 agreement by the two countries' leaders. Tensions have flared in recent times over propaganda leaflets sent by defectors into the reclusive state. North Korean state media said South Korea President Moon Jae-in's offer of envoys was turned down by Ms. Kim Yo-jong, a senior ruling party official and sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Divers in Thailand have captured dramatic footage of their efforts to free a whale shark in distress from a nylon rope caught on its tail. The dive group spotted the shark off the island of Koh Tao last Saturday and tried unsuccessfully to remove the rope, which was cutting into its tail with a knife. Whale sharks are among the biggest fish in the sea, typically between 5 and 10 meters in length, weighing about 20 tons. Efforts are being made by marine authorities to locate the shark. It is not known how the creature became tangled in the first place. That was what's also in the news. I'm Dylan Ang.
Thanks, Dylan. Before we go, just a reminder that Senior Minister Tharman Shanmugaratnam will deliver his national broadcast tonight on a stronger and more cohesive society. That's at 7:30 p.m. You can watch it on our Facebook, YouTube and Twitter pages.
Those are our top stories for today. For more news and videos, do visit straitstimes.com and remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below. Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Quay. Join us tomorrow for more stories on A Big Story.